Hello YouTube, this is KFH Makes, and we are in the shed, which I have recently cleaned out of all the muck and crap, so maybe we can actually do something in it. So today I'm going to try and learn a bit of woodwork, as that's something I'm interested in learning and progressing my skills with. So I've only got some crappy pine that was in the back of my shed, but I thought a good wee exercise today. This is some 2 inch by kind of 1.5 inch, and this is some kind of 2 inch by 1/2 inch, which I'm hoping to make dowels with this stuff. We'll see how that goes. It's very cheap wood, as I say. Well, this is very cheap pine, but I'm hoping to try and make some joints. So we'll try and do a right angle dovetail joint and a mortise and tenon joint. I've got some hand tools, and we'll try and do it all with hand tools, apart from a drill and a chop saw, because you use some conveniences where you can get them. I'm not doing it with a hand drill. I'll make that clear. So yeah, let's get started. I'm going to talk you through what I have done here. So here we've marked out the female part of the dovetail. So this end is very squint, so I'm just going to square that off. Anywhere where the pencil's scribbled is where we're going to remove the material. So here is a bit of offcut just to clean this up. I've left a 1/2 inch bit there, and then I've marked up our dovetail here, and we've got a 60-degree angle here, and that was done with my Starrett combination square, just to mark those angles, and so you can see how that works. And that was 60 degrees. It just looks right to me. As I say, this isn't structural in any way, so it's more just a training exercise. And so what we'll do is we'll go to the chop saw and we'll cut this off, and we'll cut this off, and then we'll be able to start. I've got a wee Tenon saw here. Let me take you down to the bench, so we can use that to go down. I've got a box of chisels in here, and some sandpaper and a wee rasp just in case I need it. So we'll work on the female side first, and then we can start making the male dovetail. Using the DeWalt chop saw, which I've got set up just outside the shed, I cut off this little end piece. It's now nice and square, and so here is the dovetail I'm going to cut out of this. Again, it's got the 60-degree angles, and this is the bit that's going to be removed. I'll use my little set square just to mark these lines further down, and then what we can do is we can use the Tenon saw to cut these slots, and that's just this saw back here. Let me get that in focus for you. There you go, that saw. So, like I said, I have marked some lines down here, and this will let me know if my saw is cutting straight or not, because I want to keep that line being removed nice and evenly. And then here's my line here to make sure I'm going down nice and straight. And so it's just a case of cut this one, reposition it in the vise, and cut the other one down to depth, and then we can start chiseling the wood out. So there we go, there's the 2 cuts made, and as you can see they're nice and straight. There's a little bit of extra material here and here, and that's absolutely fine because we haven't made the male end of the dovetail yet, and it's much better to have a little bit of fettling room, especially with wood, than it is to make it too loose and then you've ruined the piece. So the important thing though is to make sure these lines are nice and level and they're both at the same depth, and also to make sure on the back side you've not gone any deeper as well, which is why I marked depth line here. That's really important because everything about this dovetail needs to be nice and straight. So the next thing to do is to get an appropriate sized chisel, and I'll start chiseling from the top here, and I'll basically position my chisel just under here, and using this nylon hammer right here, I'll just slowly work away at this and take this big block of meat down, because now it's separated from here and here. I can hold it nice and tight in the vise and just work across the grain there, peeling off bits of wood as I go. So I just want to explain what I'm doing a little bit better. I've got this nice chisel, and I'm literally just coming in here, and I'm just tapping along, and as I tap along, these chunks of wood break off because they're following the lines of the wood, and they come off nicely. You can just go right along here, tap, 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 and off it comes, and then you just slowly work your way down, and you can progressively get bigger and bigger chisels, or you can just keep this one. And it's really important to have your line as close to the vise as possible to stop any extra damage or overhang, because this is a very soft wood, and just take little cuts and work away. So the other really important thing as you're doing this and you get further down is to just take your chisel and put it on that bottom line and just tap it in a few times all the way along, and that means that even if you take a heavy cut and the wood starts to split, you've created a weak point where you want it to go, and it won't blow out lower down. So, but just take it slowly. As I say, this is very soft wood, so it'll remove very quickly. And just keep coming in, taking little cuts, chipping up, and work from both sides. Don't try and go all the way across, because then you'll blow out a big chunk and you'll ruin your piece. And there we go, so that worked perfectly. You can see that the dovetail has now been cut, and for all intensive purposes in softwood it's looking quite neat. So this was the last big chunk that came out, that's what I'm telling you about. If you just take it nice and slow and you mark your bottom, you can literally just chisel out giant chunks like that. It's not about making lots of small shavings with chiseling, it's just about material removal with something like a dovetail. So that's worked very well. I'm happy with that, and we're down to our line. So the final thing to do is to just clean this up with a rasp. Now a rasp is like a file used for metal, but very, very prickly for wood, just to stop it getting clogged. So I'll just come along there and work away, and that'll just clean the bottom up, and I'll do it on the sides, but make sure you reclamp it so you're holding here on the sides, because if you don't, you run the risk of snapping the wood off, because this is very fragile softwood. Okay folks, so here is the finished female dovetail. I'll maybe put it there so you can see it better. So just a rough block of pine, but there you go, that's it cut out and chiselled and sanded. And so the next thing to do now will be to take this big block that we started with and make a mating piece like that. The male end of the dovetail all marked up, and as you can see it's pretty much exactly like the female end, but we take these side bits away now instead of the middle bit. And I've left a little bit at the bottom just so we can have something to visualise as the rest of the wood, but obviously I don't want to waste lots and lots of wood because this is just an exercise project. So this is our cut line. I'll take this over to the chop saw again and I'll chop that off, and then we're basically going to do the exact same thing. I'll show you, but we're just going to clamp it up in the vise and saw cut down here and down here, and then chisel mark along these lines and just chisel these bits of wood off. And as you can see, that fits up nicely. I'll cut slightly over on my saw lines, and that just allows for any wiggle room that might be in the wood, because we want a nice tight fit on this dovetail. They don't really work if they're a loose fit. So here's the little block fresh off the chop saw, and you can pretty much see how this is going to work. As I say, it's just removing these wings, and then this should be able to slot nicely down into that dovetail slot. So I'll start sawing these. I'll take you back once I've done the first cuts. And as I say, mark the back with your depth so that when you're going down with the saw, you know you're not going down an angle, because that can scrap a job really, really quickly. The exact same way I did with the dovetail for the female part here, using the Tenon saw, I just cut down each end. And so what you could do is you could very well chisel these, but given as this is a male dovetail and we can actually get here, it's much quicker to just flip this block on its side and just saw these bits out. And there we go. So that's just chopped out these little parts that were here on both sides, and so now we have something that looks very much like a male dovetail to the female dovetail we just cut. So now what you do is you just come here with the rasp and the sandpaper, and we just clean this up until it's a nice fit. Okay folks, here we go. We have our female dovetail all complete and our male dovetail all complete. So let's get it up in the vise and fit them together. I've just gone around with a bit of 150 sandpaper just to smooth all the edges. It's pine, so it's never going to be brilliant, but it will prove our point, and I'm quite excited to see how these fit. And here we go, let's offer it up. You can see it's a nice snug fit, which gets snugger as it goes along. And the final bit is nice and tight. And in fact, the way to finish this off is to just take the nylon hammer, give it a few taps. And look at that. Absolutely lovely. That is a solid dovetail joint, that ain't going anywhere. A dovetail joint in wood. And that's the same for any wood. This is just very soft pine, because it's all I've got. The joints are relatively square. This offcut of wood was a little bit squint to start with, but you can see they mate nice and squarely, which is the important thing, because in theory this would be much longer anyway. And then we've just got a bit of relief at the back here. Yeah, quite happy with that. That will do the job, and as you can see, it's nice and sturdy. If that was hammered together, that would be free holding. That wouldn't even need any fasteners. You could put a bit of glue on it if you wanted, but that pushed in halfway and then needed tapped the rest, which is exactly what you want for a nice dovetail joint. So let's move on to the mortise and tenon. Okay, so after the success of our little dovetail joint, it's time to make a mortise and tenon joint. So a mortise and tenon joint is a similar principle. It's two pieces which interlock, but basically what we're going to do here is we're going to use this flat side of the wood and drill using a spade bit, which is over here on my bench. Just focus that for you. So we've got the 16mm spade bit. We're going to make the female bit first. It's always better to make the female bit first because then you can size the metal bit to the female bit. The female bit's harder to make. So we're going to drill here and we'll make a rectangle pocket, and then on the male bit of wood we'll make a rectangle that will basically fit into that pocket, and then on the side we can drill a hole and that will pin the two of them together. And that is in theory a mortise and tenon joint, but don't worry, I'm going to take you through all the steps right now. Just using a simple little set square and a pencil, I've marked out our female part of the mortise and tenon joint. So this will be the mortise. Basically this pocket needs to be cut all the way through, and I've marked out the slot to 16mm wide, which is the size of the drill bit I've got to go through this. So basically I will drill holes at either end along here and maybe one in the middle, and then I'll be able to chisel the rest out to make it nice and square. Now it's important to mark this on the back side. I'll do that off camera, just so you know that you're keeping everything nice and square. So do the exact same measurements that you've just done here, which in my case is 1 inch, 2 inches and another inch. And then once we've done that, we'll chop it off here, and then that will give us our little block, and then it'll be time to clamp it up and drill the holes here to make our mortise. Right, so now that's been chopped to length, the next thing I did was to take my 16mm bit, and I believe these are called spade drills, and I've marked 8mm in from either side, which is obviously half the diameter of a 16mm spade bit. So now what I can do is I can take the drill and drill down 2 big holes here, and as I say, one in the middle just to hog out material. I'm just going to use a cordless drill for that. You could use a hand drill, you just don't need to. So if you've got a cordless drill, use that. Most people do nowadays. So I'm going to punch through, and what I'll do is I'll actually measure on the other side the exact same thing and drill down halfway this way and halfway the other way. And the reason I'm doing that is that this is pine, it's very soft and it's very likely to blow out and split on me, and that's not going to look very good. So to eliminate that, drill halfway down one side, halfway the other side, and you're much better off for it. So that went pretty smoothly, although I did hit a slight knot on the underside of the right hand hole, which was a bit of a pain. So here you can see, drilled another hole right in the middle, and now we have a nice big chunk, and you can still see where my corners are right here on the ends of the wood. So what I'll do is I'll take my rasp and I'll go right in here, and I can clean up all the way along here, and I can even clean up the pockets. There's really no need for chisel work, especially with these softer woods. They don't respond very well to them anyway. Okay, so after our clean up, we've got a nice slot in there. Now this is only cheap pine, so it has chipped out a bit around the edges where the drill was drilling, but that's not a big problem. This is only a test piece, and you get the idea. So here we go, that's a nice slot, and so now what we need to do is take this piece, and it's going to fit like so. And so in order to do that, we'll need to cut the male tenon. We'll go up into there. So here's how we're going to do this. We've got our mortise here with a nice hole in the middle, and then we've got our tenon marked out at the top of the wood here, and I've marked all the way around it where it's going to come down each side. So basically what it is a case of going to the chop saw and cutting this bit off here so we have our wee handle, clamping this bit in the vise and sawing down all the sides, and then finishing with the rasp. But I will take you through all that step by step. Okay, so step 1 is I've gone around the edge and I've sawn to my depth lines, so that bit for the 2 ends and then these 2 for the 2 sides. I've gone all the way around, and so now what I can do is just take the saw and cut vertically down, leaving a little bit extra for filing, and just saw off all these bits. It's as simple as that. Do the 2 thin bits first, stop them breaking out, and then do the 2 chunky ones. I'll catch up once that's done. And just to show you what I meant, here's one that I've done. So taken this corner, and chopped it off. So just do that on all sides, and then you'll have a rough tenon. So there we go, that is our rough tenon made, and you can see, we've chopped off all the sides, and it's too big to fit, which is perfect, because now what we'll do is we'll just take our rasp and we'll just slowly shape this down from the rough saw cut to a nice tenon. And again, it's much like the dovetail, you just want this to be a good fit, nice tight fit, push it in half the way, tap at the rest, and then we can drill the dowel hole. Okay, so here's how it's looking, and we're almost there, just got a teeny bit left, and you can see here it's a really nice tight fit in the mortise. The tenon's going in nicely, just a teeny gap, and basically what we do at this point is we finish it off with the hammer. Now this is hard to do on camera, but I'll try my best. And there you go. You can see it's closed up all the way around. It's nice and square. There's not a gap. And we're nice and flush on this side. So that's been a roaring success. And in fact, this mortise does not need a dowel. It is more than tight enough to be a non-glue joint. But we'll put a dowel in just so I can show you how to do that. And I've decided that that dowel is going to be 13mm big, because that's basically the smallest spade drill I have. So I took this piece of wood and cut off a little piece. Now I don't really have a hole or plate. You can knock these through a plate and make dowels that way. I'm just going to rough form this into a circle. It's roughly 13mm wide, and I'll leave it a little bit extra, and then it'll press itself in when I hammer the dowel in. Just using my simple wee rasp, which is over here, I've just roughly shaped that down to the 13mm sized dowel. And so now I'll go drill the dowel in the mortise and tenon, and we can whack this in and job will be even. Okie doke, so I drilled all the way through my tenon and the mortise at the same time. And so now my dowel that I've rough shaped will just start there. And so now it's just a case of tapping it in. And you should just be able to, I'll do the rest off camera, but actually that's going in really easily. So I'll just do it on camera. There we go. That's our tenon all the way in, seated, and now we've hammered our pin in, which has locked this in place. So it was tight anyway, but now it's never coming out. And we'll just cut this off flush and file it. And there we go. Now that's cut off flush. Both sides. The pin is in, and that's nice and locked in position. And we have a perfect little mortise and tenon over there now. Nice and straight on all sides. Perfect. And if we put it outside, next to our dovetail, we've done a pretty good job there. Okay, that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it useful. I certainly enjoyed making the little dovetail and the mortise and tenon. It's a really good experience, and hopefully what I've shown in this video is you can do it with a very modest shed, a very modest bench, and some very modest wooden tools. So go try it. Go have a go and see what you can do, and learn a bit along the way, because these are centuries old methods of joining wood, and it's really satisfying when you make it work. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you like this, consider subscribing. I do lots of stuff on this channel, probably a bit too much to suit any algorithm, but who cares, I'm having fun. So I'll catch you on the next one. And now it's time to clean up.